Thank you. Yeah, my name's Keith. I'm a recovered drug addict.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you very much for inviting me to share. I'll give a brief account of my experience and what qualifies me, what qualifies me as a drug addict. I started using socially and fairly acceptably in my late teens. No consequences, and I've recently thought, I used to enjoy it then and it was alright, but actually looking back I don't think I really did enjoy what drugs did to me. I think I was probably having, as described in the book, like twists that led me to use even back then, and my using was different to a lot of my friends and people that I saw using. I saw some characteristics start to establish that were just a bit different, but certainly didn't bother me at the time. And I carried on picking up and putting drugs and alcohol down for about 10 years. For those 10 years, there was no problem in my eyes. There was a niggle at the back of my mind that probably shouldn't be doing that, It certainly wasn't acceptable around my family or close friends, so it very quickly became a dark secret, my using. But as I say, it was never really a problem for me. In my late 20s, there were times where I started to acknowledge my using wasn't, in great timing. I was starting to use at times where it just really wasn't acceptable in my own eyes. If I had sort of important engagements to meet or an appointment, I'd be really surprised that I'd used in quite important times. And that was what began to worry me, I think, a little bit. That I'd know that I've got an important day at work the next day or something, like a Wednesday, and I'd be laying in bed on a Tuesday night in the early hours, unable to sleep, thinking, what's going on? So I guess, my late 20s, I began to realise that my using isn't normal, and whereas anyone I knew would use accompanied by drinks in the pub on a Friday or Saturday night, I'm sort of wondering what I'm doing on a Tuesday night. And so I started to recognise that perhaps things weren't right. I certainly wasn't willing to admit that I had a problem. That went on for a couple of years, and hindsight now, looking back, I realised that all I was doing was implementing strategies and strong strategies to try and change the course of my life to keep me away from drugs. I didn't, if you'd have asked me then, is this what you're doing? I'm pretty sure I'd have said no, but it's very obvious now looking back, that's what I was doing. I was starting to run from something that was beginning to concern me. And so I'd move around and change lots of things in my life to try and influence my using. And it would work for short periods. And then you'd find yourself back in that moment wondering where it's all gone wrong again. So life then started to become unmanageable. I'm starting to become scared by my own actions and very, very baffled as to why I was behaving like that. I couldn't see why. I used to, probably like many of us, start blaming it on things, and I started trying to buy my way out. So I started seeing these therapists in Cambridge, people that said, quite confidently, don't worry, I'll be able to sort you out, with hypnotherapy and things like that. And found they would assure me that, it'll be because your dad didn't show you a lot of love for periods of childhood, and because your mum and dad are a bit old school and things like that. And I'd be like, that makes sense now. So I started blaming them, separating myself from them a bit. Obviously it didn't make a scrap difference. It didn't matter what I'd done or what I'd felt when I was younger. It really shouldn't be influencing me using drugs on a weeknight in just very inexcusable circumstances. So, in sort of starting to seek help, I got significantly worse very quickly. I guess that in seeking help and getting a bit of self-knowledge seemed to strengthen the illusion that I was in control, which was very much an illusion, and that I could influence my drug use and things like that. So then I had to go through a period of just destruction up until the beginning of this year before I really recognised that, yeah, I'm unable to do anything about it. I brought my family into this loop, which was very, very difficult. They somehow had no idea. They knew something was up, but somehow had no idea what I was actually doing. And I woke up one morning with this newfound strength. I was going to tell everybody, and that was going to help and hopefully stop it. And it didn't. I woke up on a Sunday morning. I told my fiance. Shortly afterwards, I told my mum and my dad that I'm using a lot. I probably dumbed it down quite a bit because they probably wouldn't believe what I was really doing and what I was really putting myself through. And yeah, I guess from that point things got worse again. I came to NA and CA and started involving myself in these fellowships, hoping that I was very much there. Like we read in one of the preambles, nobody came here to find God. I was very doubtful around believing in God at that point, but I just knew that I had to find a way out somehow, desperately. I just wanted somebody to tell me something that was going to stop it, or I just wanted an injection or something that was going to just turn it off. I found it quite hard coming into fellowships. Found it a very difficult concept to digest. I found that the people around me that had long periods of sobriety, I just didn't believe them. I didn't trust anybody. I didn't believe that they could be sober. I didn't believe they could suffer with what I suffered with and have been sober. I just didn't understand. Nobody stopped me and explained how the program works until I set out on a bit of a journey to do 90 meetings in 90 days as an assurance to my family that I could commit to something for more than 5 minutes. And as I say, I was stopped in my tracks and told that unless you fully understand what addiction is and accept what you have, nothing's going to change. You can't I don't think you can progress. I don't think you can make a start in step one with little understanding about what you suffer from and with the acceptance that there's nothing you can do anymore. And if you cling on to anything through that process, it doesn't work out too well, as I've experienced. So that's like a bit of a summary of my using and what's brought me into CA and why and through going through the 12 steps and having a vital spiritual experience and me witnessing the obsession of using has been removed from me. I've just stuck around, and although I've had numerous relapses since being in CA and going, whilst going through my steps, I was relapsing. I've relapsed since. I think as a drug addict, the only thing that is going to show me the holes in my attitude towards recovery, unfortunately, is relapse. I'm not going to get a polite reminder from anybody. I had to have all these experiences to get me to where I am today. So just to bring me on to the next part, I'd like to just read a reading. We read it at our home group every week, and it really resonates. So the fact is that most alcoholics, for reasons yet obscure, have lost the power of choice in drink. Our so-called willpower becomes practically non-existent. We are unable at certain times to bring into our consciousness with sufficient force the memory of the suffering and the humiliation of a week or a month ago. We are without defence against the first drink. And I think, that little piece of information is quite important in that we are without defence against the first drink, because that's where the problem lays. Many people can, I'm sure you've seen many people will use Coke or alcohol, enjoy that initial effect, and then chase it. Coke is moreish. Alcohol I've never had a big problem with, but it's moreish, isn't it? That feeling, especially as an addict, where I don't savour the initial effect of a drug or a drink. That just starts my obsession with oblivion. I won't stop until I can't carry on. So for me, I recognise that the problem is with the first drink or drug for me. I don't recognise or recall any of the consequences of what that's going to start. Yeah, that is for me like the significant part of the problem. That's what causes me to relapse, is that I have that moment of complete, a blank spot. I twist, I have a blank spot where I can't recall any consequences. I'm skipping along to pick up in spite of the consequences, which is insane. I'm very experienced in using drugs, and I'm very experienced in just wrecking stuff, I can build things up nicely and then wreck it. I'm experienced in that, yet I've got no memory. I have that like temporary amnesia where I can go again. So it says, the almost certain consequences that follow taking even a glass of beer do not crowd into the mind to deter us. If these thoughts occur, they are hazy and readily supplanted with the old threadbare idea that this time we shall handle ourselves like other people. In spite of all that experience, I think, like recently, I thought I could have a couple of lines. I had an opportunity where I thought I could get away with it, and that my using somehow would be different in spite of all that experience. I thought there would be a different outcome. I'd have a couple of lines, laugh about it, and then get on with my day. And I was assuring myself that I'd be able to keep that a secret, because the reality was I used everything I picked up until I'm so uncomfortable I can't answer my phone. The psychosis is pretty quick to onset. But I just find it still crazy that I could think it was going to be all right. The alcoholic may say to himself in the most casual way, it won't burn me this time, and here's how. Or perhaps he doesn't think at all. How often have some of us began to drink in this nonchalant way, and after the third or fourth pounded on the bar and said to ourselves, for God's sake, how did I ever get started again? Only to have that thought supplanted by, well, I'll stop with a sixth drink, or what's the use anyhow? When this sort of thinking is fully established in an individual with alcoholic tendencies, he has probably placed himself beyond human aid, and unless locked up may die or go permanently insane. These stark and ugly facts have been confirmed by legions of alcoholics through history, but for the grace of God, there would have been thousands more convincing demonstrations. So many want to stop but cannot, but there is a solution. And I've really experienced the solution that comes from going through the 12 steps and experiencing that just complete enlightenment and freedom and peace that comes with it. And then I felt, when you work through the steps, the 12th step is to just carry this message quite simply, in carrying this message to people that are still suffering, still using, or just trying to find a way out. You're very quickly reminded of where you were very little time ago, and I think it's really important. I'd recently had a period, the longest period of peace I've had in 15 odd years. And I began to think, we describe it as an illusion. It's an illusion of power, that we're having something to do with our recovery, and that, I hadn't acknowledged it, but I was assuring myself that you're all right now. You've been through the steps, you're working with others, you're engaged in the program, and I sort of just took my foot off the gas a little bit because I was becoming preoccupied with life. But very quickly, as I say, I was reminded of my vulnerability, and when that twist came, there was no defence there at all, nothing, and I just went as easily as I had a year ago and picked up. I did, again. So it's crucial that we live within the programme and recognise that it's a daily reprieve. No amount of sobriety is going to amount to freedom in your future. You suffer with alcoholism or addiction, as described in this book. It seems it will come for you again. I mentioned earlier just, how I would notice that it seemed the more significant the time, or the more significant the circumstances surrounding me that I really shouldn't use, I would always end up using. One part that haunts me was my, in after I'd come out with my addiction with my family, and everyone was very nervous around me, constantly worried that they're going to be the next thing that triggers me into addiction, because I've led them to believe that I'm vulnerable and anything can make me go, rather than accepting actually it's just something within me. And it was my mum's birthday. I'd been at work all day. We were having a family gathering, and then I twisted on her birthday and thought, well, I can have a couple of lines before I go out for a family meal. Which, yeah, I say it haunts me really, but it reminds me how little we can do about this. Once it's advanced, we're doomed. Absolutely doomed, really. And you can get a daily reprieve, and that's the best we can hope for in practicing the 12 steps, is a daily reprieve. For me, it's turning selfishness into selflessness and living by that. As a consequence, I don't seem to relapse as often, I'm noticing. So when, I think, I've mentioned this already, but just to reiterate, for me, in experiencing many avenues of recovery and having my hopes lifted, I found I'm assuming that's what made me worse. My hopes being lifted and that sort of sense of invincibility, or that the drugs won't touch me this time. Swearing off, broken, crying, swearing, I will never do this again, and believing that, because why would I want to do this again? To then be shortly reminded we can't do anything about it, and I would do it again. It was only in my sponsor breaking down that illusion that we have anything to do with it and that there's anything we can do to influence our using. It was only breaking through that enabled me to start my recovery. And I think, that's probably very important for anyone else's as well. I think that probably concludes what I want to say. So thank you very much. I hope